Hello. One of the parts of the world that is growing incredibly quickly at the moment, and so will come under the spotlight at the Swiss town of Davos at the World Economic Forum this year, is of course Africa. We have a continent that seems to be growing incredibly quickly and economies that are changing very quickly as well. Paul Clark is the fund manager for African equities at Ashburton Investments. He joins me now. Paul, good day to you.
Hi.
It's impossible to pass a newsstand or to click onto a news website without seeing some headline about this is Africa's time or this is the African century. You travel around Africa, it's a sort of different country every week for you, I think. Are these headlines overblown?
They're not really. I think we see enormous growth, and the IMF projects plus 6% growth for Africa outside of South Africa over the next 5 years. And so that's considerable. And I think the real benefit when you travel around to these countries, as I do a lot, is you see the change. Even if you haven't been somewhere for 6 months, you see improvements, betterments. Of course, there's a downside. We often get stuck in traffic jams because these economies are growing sometimes faster than infrastructure can keep up.
Are there certain parts of these economies that are growing faster than others? I mean, we hear about South African retail groups going into Nigeria. Some do better than others in Nigeria, of course. I mean, are we seeing certain parts of the African economy growing very quickly and others maybe not quite so quickly?
I think it depends from country to country and whether or not they're exporters of certain commodities or not. So each economy is different. There are 54 different countries across the continent and they're all unique. But it's general growth that we're seeing.
Africa has a population of what, around 1 billion people now, I think it is. Those people are going to move around. They're going to be a very different billion people in 20 years' time. This is happening on our doorstep, on South Africa's doorstep. This must be a huge opportunity for us and for our companies.
Yes, and I think we see that many airlines have sprung up that are traveling with hubs in East Africa. We've got 2 big hubs with Ethiopian Airlines and Kenya Airways. We've got South African Airways, which is putting on more and more flights and bigger planes to Africa. So obviously being based in Johannesburg, that's quite convenient for us. But there's certainly a lot of people traveling around the continent and working between countries. And regionalisation of businesses is enormous. You'll find banks in Nigeria with branches across sub-Saharan Africa, businesses within Kenya expanding into Tanzania and Uganda. So there's an enormous amount of growth happening across the continent, but regionalising as well.
You talk about companies regionalising. Parts of Africa seem to be regionalising as well. Some countries, I mean, we have the South African Development Community, which we think of, but there's some parts of Africa which are actually much further ahead with the idea of regional integration.
Yes, I think obviously all of the continent is striving to do things like that. But as we've seen with the European Union, these things take a long time. So at the start, just to move away from lots of issues at borders and removing customs duties is a really good start. Many areas are talking about common currencies, but I think that's quite a long way off. But it's always good to be striving to do better.
One of the issues that will come up in Davos is technology, the role of technology, and technology has different reputations in different economies. How is technology enabling African economies? Are we seeing that certain technologies are coming in and actually making quite a big difference?
I think that plays a little bit into that regionalisation issue, and where we think of technology sometimes as cell phones, and there are lots of stories about farmers finding out how much the price of a goat is. That sort of era has passed, but what we are seeing is businesses being able to centralise, and I mentioned East Africa, so you'll find a bank based in Nairobi, which can then have branches across the region and across the country and use the optical fibre network to be able to centralise those operations, manage them better.
For anyone who's sitting in South Africa, this is hugely exciting. We have 1 billion people on our doorstep. They're richer. There's a market there. You see their economies growing. And I can just imagine many South Africans saying, if the non-South African part of the African economy is growing at 6%, why are we not?
A lot of that is to do with catch-up, of course. So quite a big amount of urbanisation. South Africa is much more urbanised, for example, than the rest of the continent at this stage. And so all the benefits that happen and come with urbanisation and better management of those economies is leading to some of this growth as well.
Paul Clark, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.